Military commander-in-chief, marking the first Memorial Day of his second term with tributes to the nation's fallen and also gratitude for their sacrifice that was echoed by his vice president and defense secretary. But he also made the unusual move of taking aim at his predecessor. President Trump participated in the ceremonies at Arlington National Cemetery just across the river from Washington in Virginia, and the final resting place of more than 400,000 of the nation's heroes and their family members. As is tradition for the nation's commander-in-chief on Memorial Day, he participated in a wreath laying at the tomb of the unknown soldier, which serves as a memorial to war dead and final resting place for those whose remains have not been identified. Trump was joined by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Vice President J.D. Vance, both military veterans.
The real tragedy of the loss is not in a single moment of suffering, as our Gold Star families know well, but in all the future moments they and their families lost.
We should never forget, even for a moment, that freedom is a gift of the highest cost and peace is won at the most precious price. These extraordinary American heroes and their immense and ultimate sacrifices they offer.
The president's Arlington remarks also called out former President Joe Biden, describing his term as 4 hard years. This was after Trump started the day with a pointed social media post that called Biden incompetent and repeated a false claim about the number of undocumented people who entered the U.S. during his term. This on a day that's typically marked by somber remembrances rather than political barbs. At the White House, I'm Karen Kafa.
Also at Arlington National Cemetery, another solemn remembrance at the tomb of the unknown soldier. People came from across the country for flowers of remembrance. This is a chance for Americans to walk across the plaza at the tomb and place a flower.
Memorial Day celebrations also happening across our region today in Lodi. People there uniting to remember the fallen at the Lodi Memorial Park and Cemetery. Veterans and families joining together in honoring and remembering the brave men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. And we had a chance to speak to one woman whose husband served in the Korean War.
It's so hard on the family. I think when my husband was so young when he went in, that his mom and dad, and they had a little ranch, and it was so hard on them to have both their sons go in the Navy. I appreciate this ceremony so much for our veterans, and the flyover just gets me, and the doves.
And you can see that Representative Josh Harder was also in attendance at the ceremony today.
The leader of a new aid distribution program for Gaza has resigned after weeks of controversy. U.S. military veteran Jake Wood was serving as the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's executive director. He announced his resignation yesterday, citing concerns over independence and impartiality. The U.S. and Israel back GHF, but have been criticized by the United Nations and others who warn that it's risking further displacing Palestinians and endangering civilians. The organization has started operations in Gaza today despite Wood's resignation. They say they plan to scale up rapidly to feed the full population in the weeks ahead.
And aid groups have warned of famine, and they say the aid that has come in is nowhere near enough to meeting the area's needs. The World Food Program says that 500,000 people could be on the verge of famine, and the aid being allowed in is what they call a drop in the bucket. One bakery in Gaza was forced to stop operating after running out of flour a couple of days ago. Outside of the bakery, people were waiting outside for hours with the hopes of getting the last piece of bread. Despite the growing international outrage on this, Israel is showing little sign of pulling back right now. An Israeli airstrike on a school in Gaza housing displaced Palestinians killed at least 20 people. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff urging Hamas to accept a new ceasefire hostage deal.
Prime Minister Netanyahu made it clear from the very beginning what he wanted to do, and he said that he's going to make the Gaza Strip smaller in size and thinner in population. These were the words that he uttered in the very first week. And so we've seen that this is exactly what Israel has done. They've made it smaller in size and thinner in population. And so what we've seen is that a place that was already the most densely populated place on earth is now turning into that much smaller because Israel has declared so much of the Gaza Strip now no-go zones.
Witkoff says that the proposal would see the release of half the living hostages and half of those who have died in exchange for a temporary ceasefire. Negotiations began for a comprehensive agreement to finally end that war.
A special surprise for a World War II veteran, why he was forced to give up his class ring in Germany, and then the gift given to him decades later.
And in the weather